There's a city where one political party has dominated for nearly 25 years, where crime has risen, infrastructure is deteriorating, and yet voters continue returning the same leadership to power, and now a challenger is making a serious move to change that. Reform UK has announced an unexpected and fully funded push into London politics, not with symbolic candidates or token resistance, but with a real campaign aimed at mayoral and assembly seats in what has long been considered Labour's safest stronghold. Conventional wisdom dismisses this as futile, arguing that London is young, diverse, and progressive while Reform's support base is older and culturally traditional, making the two incompatible. But Reform is betting that this narrative ignores a significant reality. Within London exists a large group of residents who feel completely abandoned by the party meant to represent them, and once the city is no longer treated as a single voting bloc, political openings begin to emerge. Analysts often describe London as a uniformly progressive, Labour-dominated city, and at a surface level the numbers support that view, with comfortable re-elections and widespread constituency control, yet those totals conceal deep fractures, particularly in outer London boroughs like Havering, Bexley, and Bromley, where crime is a top concern, transport has stagnated, and long-established working-class communities feel their city has been reshaped around them without their voice or consent. These districts still back Labour, but without real enthusiasm and by far slimmer margins than a true stronghold should deliver, and according to party insiders, Reform's internal polling reveals something eye-opening. When voters are asked whether they would consider Reform if it had a credible chance of winning, support jumps sharply, not to a majority, but into genuinely competitive territory, rising from around 10% to as high as 25 to 30%. So why make this move when Reform openly admits it doesn't need London to win nationally? Because the symbolism outweighs the arithmetic. Reform's identity is built around standing up for overlooked communities against distant elites, but that message weakens if London is written off entirely, reinforcing the idea that Reform is merely a regional protest movement rather than a national contender. By mounting a serious campaign in the capital, Reform is making a more calculated play, proving that even in Labour's deepest stronghold, there are communities that feel ignored. Making London competitive, even without winning it, forces Labour to defend territory it assumed was untouchable, challenges the notion that Reform only speaks for rural or coastal areas, and signals to working-class voters in outer boroughs that voting Labour out of habit isn't the only option. This effort isn't about capturing London, it's about dismantling the belief that London is untouchable, and that's the real objective many supporters and critics alike are missing. Reform's push into London isn't really about the capital itself, it's about everywhere beyond it because the real impact is psychological. When voters in places like Stoke, Sunderland, or Grimsby see Reform campaigning seriously in London, right in the mayor's own backyard, and making it competitive, the message is clear. This isn't a protest outfit making noise from the sidelines, it's a party confident enough to challenge power at the center. That shift in perception is critical, because protest parties attract votes fueled by frustration, while serious parties attract votes driven by belief that change is possible. By contesting London, Reform is trying to cross that line from outsider movement to potential governing force, while simultaneously setting a trap for Labour, because if Labour is forced to defend London in earnest, diverting time and resources to seats it assumed were untouchable, it projects vulnerability, and in politics the appearance of weakness quickly turns into real weakness, making every so-called safe seat suddenly look less secure. All of a sudden, MPs in places like Manchester, Birmingham, or Liverpool start asking themselves an uncomfortable question: if London is becoming competitive, are we actually safe? That doubt breeds hesitation, defensive strategy, and the diversion of resources, exactly the disruption Reform is aiming for, but they wouldn't be making this move if there weren't real weaknesses to exploit. Years of Labour dominance have left London exposed, with crime rising sharply, especially violent offences, and neighbourhoods that once felt secure no longer offering that reassurance. The Metropolitan Police is stretched thin, low on morale, and struggling with public trust, while transport, once Labour's flagship achievement, has stalled after the Elizabeth Line, giving way to delays, cancellations, and fare hikes. Housing has crossed from expensive into outright unattainable for working and middle-class families trying to remain in the city, turning policy failure into a daily reality for millions. These aren't theoretical debates but lived experiences, and Labour's response has largely been defensive or dismissive, insisting problems are overstated or reframing the data rather than confronting what people feel every day.